You are a man of faith, Christian, and you are a man of science. What is the role of religion and of science in society and in the individual human mind and heart like yours?
Well, I was not a person of faith when I was growing up. I became a believer in my 20s, influenced as a medical student by a recognition that I hadn't really thought through the issues of what's the meaning of life, why are we all here, what happens when you die, is there a God? Science is not so helpful in answering those questions. So I had to look around in other places and ultimately came to my own conclusion that atheism, which is where I had been, was the least supportable of the choices because it was the assertion of a universal negative, which scientists aren't supposed to do. And agnosticism came as an attractive option, but felt a little bit like a cop-out. So I had to keep going, trying to figure out, why do believers actually believe this stuff? And came to realize it was all pretty compelling, that there's no proof. I can't prove to you or anybody else that God exists, but I can say it's pretty darn plausible. And ultimately, what kind of God is it caused me to search through various religions and see, well, what do people think about that? And to my surprise, encountered the person of Jesus Christ as unique in every possible way and answering a lot of the questions I couldn't otherwise answer. And somewhat kicking and screaming, I became a Christian, even though at the time, as a medical student already interested in genetics, people predicted my head would then explode because these were incompatible worldviews. They really have not been for me. I am so fortunate, I think, that in a given day, wrestling with an issue, it can have both the rigorous scientific component and it can have the spiritual component. COVID-19 is a great example. These vaccines are both an amazing scientific achievement and an answer to prayer. When I'm wrestling with vaccine hesitancy and trying to figure out what answers to come up with, I get so frustrated sometimes, and I'm comforted by reassurances that God is aware of that. I don't have to do this alone. So I know there are people like your friend Sam Harris who feel differently. Sam wrote a rather famous op-ed in the New York Times when I was nominated as the NIH director, saying, "This is a terrible mistake. You can't you can't you can't have somebody who believes in God running the NIH. He's just going to completely ruin the place."
Well, I have a testimonial. Christopher Hitchens, a devout atheist, if I could say so, was a friend of yours and referred to you as, quote, one of the greatest living Americans, and stated that you were one of the most devout believers he has ever met. He further stated that you were sequencing the genome of the cancer that would ultimately claim his life, and that your friendship, despite their differing opinions on religion, was an example of the greatest armed truce in modern times. What did you learn from Christopher Hitchens about life, or perhaps what is a fond memory you have of this man with whom you've disagreed, but who is also your friend?
Yeah, I loved Hitch. I'm sorry he's gone. Iron sharpens iron. There's nothing better for trying to figure out where you are with your own situation and your own opinions, your own worldviews, than encountering somebody who's completely in another space and who's got the gift, as Hitch did, of challenging everything and doing so over a glass of scotch or two or three. Yeah, we got off to a rough start where in an interaction we had at a rather highbrow dinner, he was really deeply insulting of a question I was asking. But, I was like, okay, that's fine. Let's figure out how we could have a more civil conversation. And then I really learned to greatly admire his intellect and to find the jousting with him. And it wasn't all about faith, although it often was really inspiring and innovating, energizing. And then when he got cancer, I became sort of his ally, trying to help him find pathways through the various options and maybe helped him to stay around on this planet for an extra 6 months or so. And I have the warmest feelings of being in his apartment downtown over a glass of wine, talking about whatever. Sometimes it was science. He was fascinated by science. Sometimes it was Thomas Jefferson. Sometimes it was faith. And I knew it would always be really interesting.
So he's now gone.
Yeah.
Do you think about your own mortality? Are you afraid of death?
I'm not afraid. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't want to rush it because I feel like I got some things I can still do here. But as a person of faith, I don't think I'm afraid. I'm 71. I know I don't have an infinite amount of time left. And I want to use the time I've got in some sort of way that matters. I'm not ready to become a full-time golfer. But I don't quite know what that is. I do feel that I've had a chance to do amazingly powerful things as far as experiences. And maybe God has something else in mind. I wrote this book 16 years ago, The Language of God, about science and faith, trying to explain how, from my perspective, these are compatible, these are in harmony. They're complementary if you are careful about which kind of question you're asking. And to my surprise, a lot of people seem to be interested in that. They were tired of hearing the extreme voices, like Dawkins at one end, and people like Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis on the other end, saying, if you trust science, you're going to hell. And they thought there must be a way that these things could get along. And that's what I tried to put forward. And then I started a foundation, BioLogos, which then I had to step away from to become NIH director, which has just flourished. Maybe because I stepped away, I don't know. But it now has millions of people who come to that website, and they run amazing meetings. And I think a lot of people have really come to a sense that this is okay. I can love science and I can love God, and that's not a bad thing. So maybe there's something more I can do in that space. Maybe that book is ready for a second edition.
I think so. But when you look back, life is finite. What do you hope your legacy is?
I don't know. This whole legacy thing seems a little bit hard to embrace. It feels a little self-promoting, doesn't it? I sort of feel like in many ways I went to my own funeral on October 5th when I announced that I was stepping down, and I got the most amazing responses from people, some of whom I knew really well, some of whom I didn't know at all, who were just telling me stories about something that I had contributed to that made a difference to them. And that was incredibly heartwarming. And that's enough. You know, I don't want to build an edifice. I don't have a plan for a monument or a statue. God help us. I do feel like I've been incredibly fortunate. I've had the chance to play a role in things that were pretty profound, from the Genome Project to NIH to COVID vaccines. And I ought to be plenty satisfied that I've had enough experiences here to feel pretty good about the way in which my life panned out.
We did a bunch of difficult questions in this conversation. Let me ask the most difficult one. That perhaps is the reason you turn to God. What is the meaning of life? Have you figured it out yet?
Expect me to put that into 3 sentences?
we only have a couple of minutes, so please hurry up.
Well, that's not a question that I think science helps me with. So you're going to push me into the faith zone, which is where I'd want to go with that. I think, well, what is the meaning? Why are we here? What are we put here to do? I do believe we're here for just a blink of an eye, and that our existence somehow goes on beyond that in a way that I don't entirely understand, despite efforts to do so. I think we are called upon in this blink of an eye to try to make the world a better place, to try to love people, to try to do a better job of our more altruistic instincts and less of our selfish instincts, to try to be what God calls us to be, people who are holy, not people who are driven by self-indulgence. And sometimes I'm better at that than others. But I think that, for me as a Christian, is a pretty clear, it's to live out the Sermon on the Mount. Once I read that, I couldn't unread it. All those Beatitudes, all the blesseds. That's what we're supposed to do. And the meaning of life is to strive for that standard, recognizing you're going to fail over and over again, and that God forgives you.
Hopefully to put a little bit of love out there into the world.
That's what it's about.
Francis, I'm truly humbled and inspired by both your brilliance and your humility, and that you would spend your extremely valuable time with me today. It was really an honor. Thank you so much for talking today.
I was glad to, and you asked really good questions. So your reputation as the best podcaster has borne itself out here this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this conversation with Francis Collins. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, let me leave you with some words from Isaac Newton, reflecting on his life and work. I seem to have been only like a boy, playing on the seashore, and diverting myself, and now and then finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you next time.